Hey everyone, this is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I am so excited to welcome Dana Snyder. We've been orbiting around each other for a long time, and I've wanted to meet her, so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. So excited to be here with you.
So, first questions first. Nonprofit journey, was it by design or were you like an anthropology major that strayed?
Good question. So I grew up going on mission trips through church, and I'm from Sarasota, Florida, which ironically I am in right now. I'm at my parents' house, is like as real and raw as it gets. About to do my third book tour stop, which we can talk about, with my daughter napping in the room behind me. But I always loved giving back. And I was an ad PR major at UCF, and I always wanted to work in the CSR role for a sports team. Love sports, love philanthropy, but I never thought that I would specifically be working for a nonprofit.
Mhm.
But then when I graduated college, it was just a couple years after when we went through a really big country depression in 2008. And so it was a really hard job market in 2010 when I graduated to like get into anything. And so I call it like serendipity. I'm actually going to see my first boss, Lisa, tonight at the party, um, where she created literally a job for me because she received a grant, a $35,000 marketing grant. I randomly got introduced to her, and I was, like, struggling for employment, and she's like, "I would like to hire you. I don't have, like, a job description or anything." She's like, "We can make it whatever you want it to be. I just know that I want you to be on my team and help us with marketing." And then that I was in that job for 2.5 years and then worked in the corporate world, which we can talk
Mhm.
about if you want, and then for the past almost 8 years, I've been running my business positive equation focused on working with nonprofits, specifically now with building their monthly giving programs and really creating sustainable sources of revenue.
So, you love monthly giving so much, you wrote a book about it.
I do. Semi obsessed with monthly giving.
So, how did the book come about? Can you talk? And you literally just launched it, I think, only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. She's real. She's on Amazon if we can see
Yeah.
it. There we go. This is good. So the monthly giving mastermind. So back when I lived in LA, now live in Atlanta, I became a monthly donor. Um, just shortly after starting my business, I was really passionate, still am, about anti-human trafficking, and I became aware of an organization called Dressember. And at first, I don't even know if I donated to them a one time. I think I was a straight recurring first monthly donor, and I loved the monthly emails I received. They did a really good job of making our community was called The Collective. I'm still a monthly donor to this day of that organization, nearly 4 years later. And I loved the feeling of it. And I felt like if I was to give them a one time $25 gift, because I was building my business from scratch, right? I was just
Yeah.
coming off of living in New York City. Like this girl was paying off debts of New York
Sure.
City debts, but I wanted to make a difference. And I just felt like, oh, what is a $25 one time gift going to do? Like in this massive, massive, multi hundreds of $1 billion problem in the world.
Mhm.
And that just felt not worthy. I know that's silly because every dollar counts, but when they offered the ability of joining the collective, and if I could give $25 a month compounded by hundreds of other people giving 25, 40, whatever dollars a month, I was like, oh, that's something that can create true ripple effects. And so I just loved how not only I felt, but knowing the impact that the organization was going to be able to get by me saying, like, I'm in. I'm telling you, like, this is a huge issue for me. And I believe in the lifetime change of this problem. And so that's kind of where it all like started from.
So, the book talks about real life stories of programs, monthly giving programs. I
Yeah.
think you used recently an example from one of the political campaigns about weekly giving, which I thought was just brilliant, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't think most of us can get away with, but obviously political campaigns can. Is there a nugget in what you wrote, if you had to share one or two tidbits with the listeners that you'd want them to know from the book?
Oh, goodness. Well, yes. So the book, what I didn't want, so for the past two, uh, 2.5 years, I've been running a monthly giving mastermind program where
Mhm.
I've helped over 16, actually, I'm just going through around now. So it'll be close to 20 organizations building and launching or refreshing their monthly giving programs. And so I've created a framework through that, but I didn't want the book to just be about me sharing a framework.
Mhm.
I wanted to include stories that would show like peer to peer learnings. Because I
Mhm.
think what we all want is like we look at a campaign or something that somebody's launched and we're like, how did they do that? Like, what's the behind the scenes? Like, what's the messy middle? How did that come to be?
Right.
It's not, I would say usually it's like never this like beautiful, like one ask was put into existence. Like there's always um kinks and things that like come up in the back end of things. And so I want to just share that. And so the book shares 15 different case studies of organizations, causes of all different types, all different sizes, all different scales of monthly giving programs, all the way from an organization that has had about like 20 monthly donors, all the way to like the charity water of the world
Mhm.
with 66,000 recurring donors. So I would say what the book does is it does share this 5 step framework in order of how to grow, build, refresh. But then what I'll say is like kind of specific to the political example you brought up is the reason why I think they were able to do weekly is because there's only X amount of weeks left in the election cycle, therefore that fits. But that can also work for you, listener, watcher, organization, if you have something that has like a deadline. And what that ties back to is what is like the meaning, the why behind your recurring donor program. And we talk about that in step number one of the framework, which is literally create a product. And so, if there's one thing that I would love for listeners to kind of like take away or get excited about, is that when you build a monthly giving program, you are creating a revenue stream. Any product that we buy, I mean, I'm holding an iPad, right? This is, of
Mhm.
course, a massive, this didn't always exist, right? They started with the Mac.
Right.
When this was created, they created a new revenue stream at Apple. But this, there's different colors, there's different sizes, there's different features. They had to give it a name. The same goes for your monthly giving program. It should have a budget. I believe it should have a name for branding. Like everything that encompasses your program should feel like a product that you're
Mhm.
able to go and share and talk about with people. That's one big, really like difference that kind of sets the tone for everything else in the book.
That makes sense. Another topic that I'd be curious, and we can talk about that separately. I mean, we're sort of in the infancy of monthly giving, where outside the US and Europe, like that's been kind of the gold standard for years.
Yeah, Australia. I was just talking to Thomas De La Fosse. He was on our in my monthly giving summit, and he is head of performance marketing for UNICEF Australia. And he said like 40% of Australians is how they give recurring. That's just it is what it is there. They call it regular giving there. And
Regular
I would say
giving.
here it's been more common back like in the earlier days around sponsor a child. Like that was
Mhm.
pretty much how recurring was thought of. But obviously now, due to the subscription economy and just how as a culture we're buying things with our wallets, it's also shifting and making monthly giving very normalized.
Mhm.
It's not like this, wait, what? They're asking for a monthly gift? No, it's like very usual because of how we subscribe to almost everything in our lives now.
That's factual. That is factual. I have to go through my list of subscriptions and see what stays. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. And, it's not necessarily specific to monthly giving, but one of the topics I've been interested in is how do we know in nonprofit space what we know? There's sort of some accepted best
Mm,
practices, obviously. And what is unique, and this is a little bit esoteric and maybe a little lofty discussion, but I thought you and I could have it. What's unique versus what's really kind of how we deliver it, right? So, like, if I do strategic comms, there are many people that do strategic comms.
mm,
So, what's the
mm-hmm.
value proposition that different companies or different individuals bring? So, the sort of unique secret sauce versus just
Yeah.
being really good and good to work with in what we do.
Totally. I think like a big part of what I bring to everything I do is experience, right? Like, what are my learnings from? And I think it's what's really interesting is I worked in corporate America after working in the nonprofit space and was able to meet and learn from
Mhm.
the Metas and the Twitter at the time and the LinkedIn's and have in-person meetings there to learn about what they're working on and work on with Delta Airlines and Sports Illustrated and all these big brands. And when you have that access, um, you're able to get, which is unfortunate that it works this way, but you're able to get ins and answers and see a lot of things.
Sure.
And so I wanted to take all that I had learned and bring it back to the nonprofit space that I had started in my career. And then I also think it's like one, it's the business experience. It's what are you investing in from a professional development? I've attended so many conferences, learning from others, and what are the pieces that you pick up? And then I think there's also just your life. Like, what are you experiencing as a consumer, as the monthly donor?
Mhm.
And so I give now to probably 5 organizations as a monthly donor. How do I feel when a certain email crosses over? How am I experiencing a website? And then, of course, you're looking at data.
Right.
I am also obsessed with data. And so, understanding, looking at the research and what works. What does it mean for somebody to give monthly and why do they do that? What's the emotional backing to that? And so, I think to your question, it's like a combination of all those things, right?
Mhm.
The lived experiences that you've had, what you've been trained in, what the data says, and kind of like morphing that together to put together something that is at the end of the
Yeah.
day your style, your approach, like packaged together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does a lot. And, to your point about corporate sector, we sort of try to mimic the expectations that are set by Amazon for preferences and personalization. So it's just a question of do we have the right tools and knowledge and
Mm,
budget to achieve the same? I think
one
that's
thing, yeah, one thing I see all the time, which I think is super fascinating, is nonprofits don't get marketed to by some of the tools that we do as entrepreneurs.
right.
Like email platforms is a great example. There are wonderful email tools. There are great subscription management tools that do not market themselves to the nonprofit sector, which I think is crazy because they should, but they just don't. And so, therefore, it's like nonprofits miss out on the possibility of using these tools because there's no top of mind awareness that they even exist because they're
Yeah.
not being marketed to until I like come in and I've talked about Flowdesk, for instance, which is one of my platforms, or StreamYard that we're using this.
Mhm.
Like StreamYard doesn't really market itself to the nonprofit sector. However, it should,
Right.
right? For live streams. There's great tech tools for which now they are entering the nonprofit world, handwritten cards. But at first, they were going the corporate route. But nonprofits make so much sense because of all the handwritten cards and like retention rate that they're focused on. And so now they are. Now I just see them having booths at certain conferences, these other companies that first weren't there. So I, I think it'll be really interesting to see that shift too. Um, in the next like I don't even know if it's 5 years, it could be less than that.
I think it's treating nonprofit as a tax status. It's not like we're still businesses, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, well, let me switch again on you. And you mentioned corporate experience, and I did some snooping. You worked for American Idol. So the first question I'm going to ask is, who were the top singers when you were there? That's kind of what I want to know. We can talk about
So
marketing too, but
yeah, so Lane Hardy was the winner of my season. So this was in like 2018 to 2019 season.
okay, okay. Can you talk about that experience and what it was like?
Yeah. I mean, it was totally unexpected. It was really fun. So I was a digital producer. So my role was I worked with the talent, which was like Katy Perry, Luke Bryan, Lionel Richie, Ryan Seacrest, Bobby Bones, on creating content for them to therefore share on their platforms to amplify the awareness of the show. And so whenever we did either live shows or we were pre-taping things, which is when we traveled around the
Mhm.
country, I was always looking for what are moments to capture for each of them, knowing what their audience is like, scheduling lives with them, doing supplemental content, like when a show wasn't airing, like thinking about all that. So
Mhm.
it was very much in the vein of content creation, um, knowing lots about video. We did like a pre-live show, working with talent management, all of that. Um, it was super fun. Just a totally different world that I had never like been in before, but it was great.
Did you ever have an opportunity to talk to Katy Perry about that shark thing that she did on one of the shows?
No. No, we did talk lots, but always about usually content for the show.
Fair enough. Fair enough. One of the things that you and I share, I mean, I've seen photos and videos of you with your daughter in LinkedIn and just in professional space, and you talk openly about motherhood. Can you talk a little bit about balancing and what you want somebody who is perhaps a few years behind you coming up the ranks to know about what it's like to
Oh.
be a professional and a parent?
Yeah, I mean, it's something totally different when you're a solopreneur and a
Mhm.
mom, and so I had to really think about what was maternity leave gonna look like for me, um, and everybody feels differently after they have their child, and especially this is our first, so you don't know what to expect,
Mhm.
you don't know what your body's gonna be like. I knew coming out of it that I did not want to go back to work when I thought I was going to. And so I did a much slower rollback. So I was
Mhm.
working like 3 days a week. Um, and then we ended up our life things that happened, right? Like the daycare we were supposed to have never opened a year later.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting a nanny and like what does that look like? And which is part time. And so I think you just kind of have to go with the flow of your gut and what feels natural for you as a new mom or second time, third time. Um, I will say I definitely shut off now. So when we usually pick her up from daycare now by like 4:30, because she's still like bath in bed by 6:37. She's in bed
Oh,
by 7. And so, yeah, I know you're on the other end of the, like, spectrum where they're probably just coming home.
oh,
Um,
yeah. They're leaving the house around 9 p.m. or 10
yeah,
p.m.
yeah. Um, so I stop working usually around 4, and I used to, oh my gosh, work way longer, but, like, I want that time with her, like, that's so precious, and so I'm much more of a morning person. Um, so I think it's just all about what feels natural to you and how you wanna dictate that, and I think I also set much stronger boundaries.
Mhm.
Like, when I'm away, I'm away. Try and set my phone away. Even, like, we have a lot of conversation about how much I even post about her with work, especially as she's getting older. I think it's different as a baby because they change so much and what they look like. But as she's getting older, doing it less frequently.
Mhm.
Um, and even, like, my husband and I talking about that, like, because we're we gonna ask her for her permission, right? About, "Can mommy, like, share this?" And so that's something we talk about in our household. Um, but yeah, I mean, she's awesome.
Yeah.
I love being a mom and think a lot about the combination of work and motherhood and especially like forward thinking, like what does that look like? Um, yeah, I think it's ever evolving, and I'm sure you might feel the same way. But I think in every like age chunk, she's 17 months now, and so like, what is life going to be like when she's in preschool or then kindergarten, and what do we want our life to look like? And my husband and I, there's a, like conversations we have a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's encouraging for many people to hear that it doesn't make you any less professional being a parent and being
Yeah.
present about it. That we don't have to pretend like we don't have families anymore. So that's
No, and I think that's huge. Like, she has joined so many calls, like, popping on. There was lots of times when she was at home and I was still, like, breastfeeding, and I'd be like, "I'm just gonna put the camera off," and
yeah.
everyone was totally fine with that. Um, I think it is a new age of acceptance of families, and I think also for the men too.
Yes.
Um, and realizing that they're dads and they have just as much,
Right.
a presence. Like, Daniel says all the time, he's like, "I'd love to, like, work from home and take care of Kay."
Yeah. Yeah, no, just giving permission to bring our whole selves. I think that's what's
Yeah.
changed quite a bit. I feel like in the past couple of years, and just really value and appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, grace. Oh my goodness. Like for example, we do an in-home daycare, which we love, with Kennedy, and she only has there's 6 kids, like of different ages,
oh,
up to 4. And so she has to, or not has to, but she has a vacation time. And so it's coming up in October where she gave us, she's like, I'm out for this week. And at first we're like, what do we do? I was like, I'm gonna take off.
yeah,
I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna spend the time with Kennedy and we're gonna go do mom and daughter things. And that is the one thing I will say, I love, love, love having the time and the flexibility to say that I can do that. I don't have to ask a boss
Mhm.
if I can do that, because those are just curveballs that can be unexpected, or if they get sick or whatever, right? Like, there's just things that you are not in control. It's the
Yeah,
biggest thing of becoming a parent, right? Like, you're not in control. So, um, that is one thing that I love, is the freedom and flexibility of time.
part of the equation. It was so wonderful to have you on, Dana. Can
Thank
you
you.
tell, before we wrap up, can you tell everybody where they can get the book?
Yes, if you go to positiveequation.com/book, it's available there, or of course, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I think bookshop.org, wherever you shop for books. And it's just the Monthly Giving Mastermind, a framework to build, grow, and sustain subscriptions for good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Really appreciate it and look forward to learning more about what you're doing and just cheering you on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.